Everybody. The pipes and machinery that surrounded them, Sir Michael Mash. Sir Michael Mash raised the knife, his fists clutching the hilt tight. No, Richard shouted. The knife plunged down. It had less than an arm's length to travel. It would slice easily into the boy's heart. The tip reached Matt's shirt and it pricked his skin. But that was as far as it went. It stopped as if caught by an invisible wire. Sir Michael uttered a strange strangled moan, pulling down with all his might. He started at Matt, not knowing that the boy's power had finally awoken, and with that knowledge come the first whispers of fear and defeat. No, he muttered in a broken voice. You can't, not now. You can't stop me now. Matt looked at the knife and knew that he was in total control. Sir Michael screamed. The blade was glowing molten red. The hilt was burning. The palm of his hand, his skin crackled and smoke rose, but he couldn't drop it with at least effect. He managed to bring his arms down, and the knife tumbled unlessly to the floor, whimpering. He spat on his wound, and at the same time, the straps that had been holding Matt smudged and snapped. Matt rolled off the altar and got it to his feet. He took a step forward and stood on the surface of the pit, daring the villagers to come close. Nobody moved, even the creature beneath. All through it was 100 times its own size, cowered and backed away. A streak of poisonous green ripped outwards in a brilliant stain. Matt turned to face the villagers. Nobody tried to stop him. He broke through the circle and ran towards Richard. The metal railing behind the journalist snapped instantly. He was free. "Follow me," Matt ordered in a voice that was barely his own. Too stunned to do anything but obey, Richard followed him. By the time the villagers had absorbed what was happening, they had disappeared through the one door of the chamber that was still open. Miss Devil recovered herself with a howl of fury. She launched herself after Mr. Baker. The chemist tried to follow her, but he had left it just too late. Follow her, but he had left it just too late. He had only taken 3 paces across the chamber when the ground in front of him broke apart, fragments of metal and concrete flying upwards. Orange flames roared, and a dense cloud of white smoke poured out. Something him screaming. He collapsed to the floor and lay still. A siren whirled and light set all around the dome began to flash a radiation warning. The levels were already lethal and were rising with every second that passed. Stay in the circle, Sir Michael bellowed. He was sobbing, still cradling his ruined hand. The radiation and the radiation has broke free, but were protected in the circle. The orange flames climbed up high, even even when the stones licking against the ceiling. Smoke bleaks out, forming a living carpet. A sprinkler system had come on automatically. And thousands of litres of water was showering down, soaking and blinding the villagers. Still, it wasn't enough to put out the fire, not this fire. The flames leaped through the water, hissing and cracking. The old building began to shake. Claire Deverell was the first to break with a panic-stricken cry. She threw up her arms and ran between two of the stones, making for the same door that her sister had taken. But the moment she was outside the magic circle, she was no longer protected. The heat of the flames blasted into the earth, and her clothes caught alight. The smoke grabbed at her legs, dragging her down. She screamed and tried to scream again, but there was no air in the room, only smoke and fire. Her face controlled and her eyes went white. She fell and lay there convulsively on the floor. "Stay in the circle," Sir Michael repeated. "The doors are locked. They can't escape beneath the floor." The gigantic creature punched and punched again at the invisible barrier, but it couldn't break through. It had rule, it had fire, but the blood of the child had been denied it, and it didn't have the strength. And that was when Sir Michael noticed the knife. The tip had pented Matt's shirt, and skin. Matt's power had stopped it, but not before it had drawn blood. There was a single red drop at the very tip of the blade. Sir Michael's eyes widened with a cry of pleasure. He leaped forward and snatched up the knife. The blood was still wet. It glasted beneath the arc lamps. Sir Michael laughed and brought the knife crashing down towards the gate. The power was surging through Matt, and nothing could stand in its way. Locked doors were torn from the hinges, as if struck by a tornado. Still, plates bent and crumpled as he approached. Amigoan was a labyrinth, but he seemed to know exactly where he was going. Down a flight of metal stairs, along a corridor, through an archway, and on towards a set of automatic doors. And that hissed open as he approached. It was as if he had worked here all his life. Richard was close behind him. The journalists no longer know where they were going, but he couldn't tell that their greedal direction was down already. They had to be well below ground level. The warning sirens were still surrounding all around them, and lights flashed red and white at every corner. Stream hissed out of pipes. That water cascaded down from the sprinkler system. But all power stations seemed to be trembling on the verge of breaking up, and he was worried that they were going to trap themselves. There couldn't be an exit under the ground, but he knew that this was no time to argue. He kept his mouth shut, following Matt in grim silence. They passed through our room, stacked from floor to ceiling with banks of machinery. Then down another corridor, a door at the end flew open, beckoning them on. It led to a metal gently above a tank of water, but it was like no water that reached hard ever since pussing to catch his breath. He leant over it. The water was blue, a flushed, untroubled blue, and it was crystal clear, without so much as a spark of dust on the surface. The tank was square and about 3 meters deep. At the bottom was a row of metal containers. Containers once stamped with a series of numbers. Half of them were empty. Half contained twisted bars of metal packed tightly together. Richard knew what he was looking at. This was where the radioactive waste from the reactor was stored to cool it. It wasn't water in the pool, but acid. The boxes beneath the surface contained the deadliest substance in the world. With a silver, he had stepped back. Matt was waiting for him. His face set with a strange dimension. It was hard to tell if he was asleep or awake. "Okay, come," Richard said. The blow took Richard completely unaware, crashing into the back of his head. If he hadn't been moving forward, it might have broken his neck. He fell to his knees. A woman brushed. Subscribe. Subscribe, hit bell, share, like, thank you. Watch my full videos, thank you, and on my playlist. Thank you. Click my end screen.